So yes, welcome to I think the 12th Data Value Show. We've got Jon Cooke. We have had some slight audio issues, so he's just dropped off again. So we have to fill the time a little bit while he comes back. So we're going to be covering what is a data product, and trying to double down onto what the definition really is from the context of the data world. And what is a data product management approach? So is it approach more than a product itself? And I know this is one of his favorite topics, data mesh. So where data mesh meets data products, and how data contracts relate to that. So data contracts is probably one of the biggest things at the moment, and how that's linked to data products. And yeah, I think also we talk about how we deliver value from data products. And I like to use the word value a lot. It's called the Data Value Show. And because Jon is a specialist, he's at many areas. We'll talk about how LLM features are popping up in data products as well. So let's see how it goes. Jon.
Hey Chris, how you doing?
Well, hey, that's better. We have no echo now, so thank you very much for coming along. So I normally start with an introduction of how I know, because normally everyone on the show we have had some connection or collaboration over time. So I think me and you met at Big Data London, not this year before, in the post-event activity, which was I think the last night in the. If anyone went there this year, the pub on the corner, which I couldn't remember the name of it, but everyone hang out there, and we had a good debate. And since then, we realised that we were from very similar mean data streets. You live just round the corner from me. I think we're about three streets away when I'm in London, which is less nowadays. But always great to have a conversation with you. Your views on things are always interesting. We're normally aligned, but today there may be some controversy. We may have a disagreement on something, but that's it. So, Jon, without further ado, welcome. Do you want to give yourself an introduction of a bit about yourself?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate the being on, and that's a great intro into it. Yeah, so Jon, I've been around for 30 years in the industry, doing data and data products and that kind of thing, and sort of analytics. Went through the whole Hadoop phase back in the 2000s. Was doing low latency messaging in the late 90s, sort of architecture, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's been a bit of an interesting journey. The last 2 years has been really focusing on sort of data products and trying to look at things like the data mesh, data fabric, but also working with the business. I mean, that's fundamentally what I do. I sit the business between the business, data and technology, and also product management. I sit and try and work out what the business needs, drive business initiatives, and also business plans and strategy and that type of stuff, but using analytics. And it's something that I've been sort of really on top of my mind the last couple of years, how you actually drive the analytics, drive the business strategy through analytics, which I think is the key question, I think, in our space. And I'm looking forward. I think data product is really that kind of nexus between the business, product management, and data. And really looking forward to sort of deep diving with you on this subject.
So I think it was the data product. Well, let's like what we think a data product is, and we've had some discussions on this, and so. I don't want to influence you. For the audience, what would your definition of a data product be?
So I'm going to be quite controversial here, saying actually I don't think it matters what the actual definition is. What really matters, and it's something that Brian O'Neill talks about, is actually the verb rather than the noun. The data product approach, data product management, is actually more important than the actual definition, because there's lots of different definitions. There's sort of the data mesh one, which is more kind of data microservices. There's the ones that people talk about, analytics. There's ones that talk about, other types of things. And really, it's down to an organization to actually understand what a product is to them. And the product management bit is actually the most important bit. So what gets delivered, in my mind, to the business to actually drive those business initiatives? What's the composable unit of delivery that actually drives a new product launch, or a campaign, or efficiency in finance and that type of stuff. So I've got my definition of what we call data products, and for me, it's an analytics component which has a user experience, has potentially an API, has its own data, and drives a particular business use case. So it could be something simple as a sales metric, give me my total sales for the month, or it could be something very complicated, like I think ChatGPT actually is a really good example of a very complex data product, or it could be a risk model that does probability default and risk scoring and that type of stuff. So that's the way I tend to talk about a data product with the business. And I don't really use the word data product as well, which is kind of interesting when I'm talking to business people. So I did this last month, sat down with the CEO, head of product, CTO, and COO, and we worked out 3 products that required them to run their business. And they're actually credit models. So I used language like a metric, a forecast, a decision model, that type of stuff. And that's the language I tend to use for the business teams. And then obviously with the technical and data teams, I then talk much more around kind of, well, it's actually a microservice that needs a regression algorithm here, or a window function there, that type of stuff. But I tend to attenuate the language depending on who I'm talking to.
I think you're spot on. It's that narrative and making sure what you're saying actually resonates to the end client. And if you start talking a product, they're going to think, and I've done this and ranted about this before, is a product has a SKU, and some people on the call have probably heard me rant about that as well. But I think that leads on to you're right. It's the mindset we're looking for in this industry, and I think historically, I think there's a question I put up in it: what did the world do before data product thinking? I think people didn't understand. They wanted to build a data platform, and we were too technology driven. And there's been a few successes, many failures with that approach. And I think it was because it was already a technology focused engagement or strategy. And I think that product brings that first sort of shift in mindset to thinking, we need to think of this as adding value, which I like to say is what business problem is it solving for you? What part of your underlying strategy is this underpinning? And if it's not, why are you doing it? So it helps to question why we're doing things and making sure that they are taking us into a route where we think of these things as features. They're features onto a product. And if we think of it that way, is we don't go and try and build one big product without knowing all the little things it needs to do and doing it in the right order.
No, absolutely. I think it's interesting. I've been coming through the whole Hadoop kind of data lake things back, 10, 15 years ago, and there was a kind of build it and they will come. Let's land all the data in one place, but let's not do anything till we land all the data type thing. And I think there's still a little bit of that kind of pervasiveness. And I understand you've got to curate data, you've got to have trusted data and all that kind of stuff, which makes perfect sense. But there is a propensity for some team to kind of think we need to get it all modeled and all those kinds before we can actually start generating business value from it. And I think this is the product thinking is kind of the opposite way around in my mind. For me, it's about, what's the business problem we need to solve, and part of that is also driving the business. And there's many times I've had to reframe the problem. Is that the right question you're asking, and is that the right way of doing it? But assuming you can actually define that with the value framework and all that sort of stuff,
it's
then
like
can we test it out?
Asking why 3 times.
The so what, right? If I give you this data set, what are you going to do with it? It's like, or I got talking to an organization earlier this year, and they said give me 120 metrics. It's like, deliver that in 4 weeks. It's like, well, I can't do that. And which are the most important ones? Oh, we don't know. And it's like, well, actually, what's the key outcome? What's the key decision you want to make? What's the key outcome you want to make? And what's the bare minimum amount of data you need to do that? And I think this is the mindset shift.
MVP, minimal viable product. It's got the clues in the name, isn't it?
Exactly right. But it's also minimal viable data. Yeah. And I think that is something that's quite different.
Yeah, that's a good, and it's mapping that the minimal viable data that can map to the minimal viable product, all of them providing value. I think it's the order you do things as well. And I think that's what, all our discussions down the pub on there.
That's right.
Yeah, or was it our local office? We call it.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, where we see what's the right path in doing it, and I think it's always business led. And I'll just put, I think we've answered this one, but yeah, hopefully we've covered it, or John's answer covered that one. And I think that the world before it is, we were platform thinking, not product thinking.
We were, well, not data product, but obviously product thinking has been around for a long time, right? So,
in the data world, yes.
Exactly right. In the transactional world, I mean, I've got trading platforms and sort businesses and that kind of stuff, and so that's been around. It's just the transfer into the data world, I think, is absolutely.
I think that's and this way, talking to people in the industry and finding out their backgrounds. I think the common thing I'm seeing now is more and more of those. My mic gone down again, is it? Sorry.
All right.
Right, I'm caught on it. Right, yeah, I've had some problems. Sorry, everyone with the problem with the mic. Yeah, so you're seeing more people coming from that software background, that software engineering or that product thinking, and data ops has enabled that to be delivered technically, whereas it wasn't probably in the earlier days. So I think I've got some great questions in it. So let's just bring up on this. I think so apologies at the mic, everyone. A shout out to Andrew Jones and Dan Tooney, sorry. We've got one from Paul here. Let's have a look. When do we need it? Okay, so so large scale data transformation. So, and it's great when we sit around and like architectural ivory towers or like our puristic views, which we do sometimes. It's hard to think in large organizations. It's tough, and you've got many pieces of the puzzle. How do you see that as being bigger? Do you see that easily achievable in large scale organizations from your experience, John?
What to implement sort of product management, data product thinking? I think the challenge always is with organizations, with especially larger ones, is getting that product mindset and also getting the businesses to really adopt. I mean, my mind's analytics, right? Getting the business to actually run analytics and actually adopt them. I think that's quite a challenge. It's quite funny if you go into the startup world, it's all analytics and it's all like product market fit, and we go and test with users and we come back and we measure them and then we iterate and then pivot and that kind of stuff. When you transfer that to larger organizations, it gets a lot harder. Fundamentally, because of a couple of reasons. Obviously, just the scale of the organization, the fact that you have to spin up these huge programs rather than really do sort of small tests and kind of pivot that away because of the funding rounds and that kind of stuff. And also this kind of difference between sort of external and internal customers, right? Users. It's I had a very interesting conversation earlier today. It's like in an external customer, what you're trying to do is deliver a product which solves a particular pain point, but it's really easy for them to use. And I thought another great quote from Marnix, which I spoke to earlier, was we're in the business of change of behavior. Data and analytics is a change process. That's what it is. So in an external environment, your customers, they won't give you money if you don't solve their problem and do it nicely. In an internal, it's actually slightly different. You've actually got to go from the top down, saying actually we need to do this big change, either a new product launch or we need to streamline this part of the organization. It's almost like the operating model side of it. So actually, that's really the hard bit. Getting product management internally to be able to do that. Obviously, externally that should be there, but obviously in large organizations sometimes it isn't. But that's tricky. But internally, it can be quite. That's the key bit you've got to get first. Otherwise, you're going to be spinning your wheels, I think.
I think so. When we've had this chat about like business process mapping or business process modeling, and we fiercely agree that the value of what it can provide when identifying areas of optimization. And I think if you haven't got those things to hang it off, and I think any large scale data transformation, it really needs to understand how that data is being used, why that data is being used, the cadence, the frequency, and also the quality, because certain things don't have to have all of your quality checks in place. It may need some of them, it may not need all of them, and also it may not need that data as quick as others. So I think this probably leads on to so have we answered this question first of all before I go off on a data contract sort of discussion maybe? But my view is I think data product thinking, thinking of things as business services within your organization rather than saying being tied to the vendor name of what you're doing. Or I need my Salesforce API, or I need my Snowflake ingest or something. What? Be more descriptive on actually what that is, and be technology agnostic, because we have many tools in our toolbox as data people, and a good data platform will have good patterns to show where what should be used in each use case, and remove any emotional attachment of doing it with one particular vendor. I think
that's really important. Yeah, sorry. I think that's really important. It's one thing I fell of that a few years ago. I tried to build a multi-tenant, multi-use case, multi-pattern platform using Spark, years ago, and it was great. And I put the whole architecture together. First use case came off the bat, couldn't support it. Again, this is back in the Spark. And I was thinking, actually, so this, tools for the trade, right? Tools for the use case, right? Fundamentally, it's this is why I talk about. I know some people don't like this, but I talk about the ecosystem rather than the platform. If you look at public cloud, right? That's actually an ecosystem of multiple technologies for different purposes, right? And that's really the kind of thing where data product thinking hits the kind of technology nexus, where we're actually delivering composable technology components, analytics components with different engines and different things for different use cases, and we're stringing them together as an ecosystem, an orchestration ecosystem. And that to me is really, again, a different mindset. We think about data platforms, it's largely based on a SQL engine or something like that, which is great. But actually, what if I want to do a graph use case? What if I want to do a Monte Carlo simulation? What if I want to do a machine learning or something like that? It's really, how do we spin up technology patterns and technologies that all work to get played nicely together, run obviously by the business teams, but actually to support the business case themselves. So I think that's a really important point.
And something that pinged in my mind, you're saying that, is the term stack we've used it for a while. I've done some rants about we've run out of names for it. With a big data platform, data warehouse, modern data stack, and I go talk about the mean data streets being the business value data streets, or the oasis that we're looking for, that we're not going to this data mirage, that's that perfect architecture that just does everything as you want it. I think the ecosystem makes you think of it slightly different, because your stack, it's all laid up on top of each other. You draw there, and I like the graphs are great now of how you do all these different relationships. And I think if you apply your patterns to a graph of the different technologies, you then which are providing different services based on those patterns, you're abstracted away from the vendor name to some degree, and and the business will understand what you're talking about, what it's actually doing, and they'll have a better understanding and being able to articulate their requirements.
Although to just say that the business actually don't care, right? They don't care if it's a graph or it's a database or whatever. What they care about is can we solve the use case, right? I mean, that's really
outcomes. Exactly. How quick I can get it, how accurate it is, and does it do what I wanted? That's it. That's all they care about. That's all they care about.
You got another question?
I think this is a bit of a shout out to Dan. So I caught up with him recently when I was over at a Sigma event with Kevin Hugh. It's reducing risk in terms of value. And Dan anyway, he's part of the
yes. Hey Dan, how you doing?
He's part of our product. What's it called again? Sorry, the
product leadership community.
That's the one. So shout out to Dan. But I think we're just we agree with you, Dan. We got you. And then just MVD. You think you need a patent that one? So you need a T-shirt for that one next job.
Indeed, yes,
So we got another one from Andy. So another. Hi Andy, how you doing? So how long does it typically take? So it's like how long's a piece of string a little bit, but So how have you seen? How long have you seen that take in some of the organisation you've worked with to get to that approach? And does it really does it link directly to the size organisation or industry from your views?
So I think it depends on, I mean, there are actually multiple factors in there, but it really depends, first of all, on the maturity of product thinking generally, and I'll come back to that. It really is, are the business actually gasping for analytics to help them run stuff, right? Is that there? Do they understand the product management mindset? That's kind of the first bit. And typically the larger the organization you get, unless they're very mature, the harder that becomes, right? A smaller organization, you can pivot, and you can, and you can't. You've got customers you need to sort, you need to service on a day-to-day basis, so you can get that kind of that in there. But larger organizations, it can be quite tricky. And as I say, if they haven't really got a product management mindset, and this is something I see a lot, and we discuss a lot, and think it can be quite hard. The fact that it's data products is almost irrelevant. It could be any type of product, right? Any kind of IT or software product. If the business isn't there, or the organization isn't there, in maturity, it can be really hard. So it can take sometimes years to do that. You need to get that kind of cultural product management thinking in there first. You need to do MVPs around there. You need to try small bits of it and then roll it out and get success factors. Sometimes you need some cultural change. Sometimes you need an operating model change to do that. Actually, large of the time you need to do that. And also, I think Dan also talked about the sort of hub spoke model. I've seen, I worked in an organization a few years ago. They had really advanced analytics people in their business teams, and they had a central team. The central team were basically building data products for those business teams. They weren't really linked or joined up together. They were almost like completely separate. But they had the teams in the businesses really had that kind of mindset. We need to deliver to our business. We can build our models and all that type of stuff. If that isn't there, then you're going to have to try and push that into that. Either you have a central team that actually builds them, pushes them. I've seen that work. So data products isn't all about centralization or decentralization. It's about having business facing people building analytics, in my mind, and those could really sit in the central team or in a business team, ideally the business team, but they can do either. So it's really getting that piece around there. So if the maturity is there, you can probably get data products up and running within months. If there isn't there in a large organization, you're probably talking quite a long journey to be able to do that.
And I think it's that I've moved on the other comment now, but it's that gradual thing. You need to take them all on the journey, and you find the different vehicles. And I use the analogies of these legal cases or use business cases where you're going in and you're winning over different judges, and then gradually it becomes easier because you've either been able to sell what you can do and be able to evidence it, and if you evidence it, it becomes a much easier each way. I think that I love that Dan's comment. I think this came up with Guy Adams when he was on the data ops one. It was the force multiplier, and I think it's that machine that makes the machine. So like if you've got a well-oiled Formula One style gearbox that can do any 6-7 gears that it can do, so it's got a horse for every course, so to speak. You're able to provide what the business need quicker, faster, and if you're doing it in the right way, and this is where my view is that the data department can have that vision, have that picture of that architectural blueprint, that data oasis they want to get to. They never have to show the business what that looks like. All they have to do is just map out what are these initiatives, these different features, these different data products. Each of them are adding the capabilities or technologies that and validated can achieve the requirements. And Absolutely. You do it in that iterative way. So,
but also you can actually get it to drive the requirements. So I do this a lot with businesses. I actually sit down, like I said before, I sit down and work out what the business needs to do, but using data products as the language, as the lingua franca. All right, so you want to be able to, you've got an ops team, so I want to reduce the cost of it. Right, okay, let's have a look at the ticket spend. Let's do a forecast on ticket spend. Let's do a forecast on resource allocation, and let's actually then do a correlation between those and see where the gaps are. And then you say, oh, actually, you can actually reduce that by 20%. By having better efficient allocation of resources. You need 3 different products for that. You need a historical what's happened. You need a forecast of what's going to happen. You join that with your staff cost, your staff roster. There's 3 products. So actually now I'm driving the conversation with the business. I'm not actually just sitting back going, what do you want? Here's KPI or dashboards or whatever. I'm actually driving that conversation. That is something that's super, super powerful because the businesses I get that understand that. Again, this is about this kind of maturity of actually using analytics to do business change. It resonates really a lot around that, and you've moved from basically an order taking sort of data team to almost like an actual product team, but it just happens to be analytics and data products that you're using to do that.
And I think we talked on the we talked when we were at the on the panel at Big Data London, and we had Katie Ward who was on there talking about the role of a CDO, and I think we all agreed that CDO role needs to think more product thinking. If that CDO is more of that mindset or is able to speak that particular language. They more need to be a salesperson for what they're doing rather than a technologist. And I think that will really help with that business domains that they serve, is because they speak the right language each of those domains. And that's their focus. So
it's interesting because if you go back a few years, there used to be a role called systems analyst back in the day when I first started in technology, and it was actually interesting enough on my course at university. The systems analysis piece was more around kind of psychology and social thinking and that type of stuff, and part of it was exactly that. You know, as architects, as kind of people, as technology leaders, we're trying to sell an idea, we're trying to sell a concept, and you're absolutely spot on. With analytics, you're doing the same thing. You're trying to sell, take away the export to Excel button, which is a perennial problem, right, of any analytics platform. We've all seen it, but you need to sell the idea of actually, if you put these analytics components in place, actually your job will get much better, much quicker, much faster, etc., etc. So you're absolutely right. That sales piece is really important.
I think it's creating that FOMO experience that, what one department tells another department, oh my God, they just saved my job now. And my department, we hit our bonuses, we hit our targets much easier. I think, oh, what? I need that help to optimize. I'm understaffed. I need to be more efficient, or we're not achieving our sales targets, or whatever each of their problems is. And I think that role of that CDO, or maybe it's CDPO, it sounds a bit like C3PO, but Chief Data Product Officer, or that
just data product officer. How about that?
Yes. Let's go with that. But they want a C name, don't they? Though they want to.
That's true. Yes. Yeah.
You know one until you got a C. Even I've got one now. Even though I gave it to myself, but
it's interesting that the data product office could be just under the chief product officer, and it's just the analytics side of it rather than digital or whatever. It could just be another stream of that, right?
I think you're right, and we can talk about org structures that support that data product mindset. But I think we all agree they need to have the ability to achieve and realize the outcome. Because if they're too dependent on the CIO agreeing to it, and then you've already won them over, they've got to go and sell it to them as well. So maybe the answer is, and I think we've talked about this, you're selling to the CEO eventually. That's the person that you need to be pitching to. And if the CDO has that direct access, even maybe by proxy to start with, but then gets a seat at that top table, I think that data product mindset in that evidenceable way would become mainstream now. It would just be the default way of working, I think. We got there's thick and fast. We'll go back to see if we're on topic of the actual areas that we're meant to be covering, because we're going around it. But Keely's she's done some great posts and added some great comments to some of the stuff in the past. And I was trying to read it and listen at the same time. So I didn't do that good. So
yes,
we're winging this at the same time. Let's try and understand it. And they're never oddball conversations normally. So
as appropriate, it's got something like permaculture. That's a great word. It's like for production needs. Let's get some agnostic approach. Technology. I love the concept behind it, because basically it seems like resilient to be tool dependent. Yes. I think this is absolutely right. So
I'll take this down. It's blocking our thing, but anyway, we'll
there we go. Yes, yeah. It's there's a lot to unpack there, but I think it's a great comment. I mean, I think this is it. It's sometimes we do. I mean, I've been in technology for a long time. I've been in data for a very long time as well. But sometimes we lose sight of the actual what we're there to do. We're a support function, right? Fundamentally, we're there to help drive the business, either make new money, or efficiency of the business, save money, or whatever. That's what we're there to do fundamentally. And the technology is just a tool. Yep. It's a tool, or the technology we are to do that. The process is just a tool. The people, I won't say we're tools because that's a bit rude, but we are people to help facilitate that whole process, right? To help drive it and that sort of stuff. So for me, we talk about the modern data stack and talk about stack. It's not really about stack. It's that it gets the right tool for the job. And coming back to the ecosystem, go to the microservices as well. We can have microservice written in any kind of technology, that type of stuff. Some which are state driven, some which aren't, and they all support an ecosystem that supports business-facing products, right? And that's the mindset, and they can be in different technologies, they can have different functions, they can have different types of stuff. So I think I love that permaculture, which sounds great. But it is about stuff.
Yeah, I use that before, but it's that emotional attachment piece, the permaculture. I love this hammer; it's great, and I think Ian
Yeah,
Blunden it is. If every problem you had was well, if you only got a hammer, every problem you got is a nail. So
exactly right. Yeah, yeah.
it's in but I've flipped. It's not easy though doing that. I know that because
No, no, it
I've
isn't.
been
It isn't.
head of architecture at a few companies, and it just wasn't data. Well, I owned
Yeah,
the full architecture. Well, sort of. So I had to go and get the money from CFO, so it didn't really feel like I owned it as such. But it was. Your engineers are very strong-willed people, and they are because
yeah.
they love what they do. They love to code,
Of course, yeah, yeah,
and the problem I found is when you start to do certain patterns and you say, right, okay, look, these are and it goes down into the task list within the Scrum teams and the product
yeah,
owner. He starts to or the product, starts to Scrum Master takes their view into it, and they just overrule you. No,
yeah,
we decided not to do that pattern because
yeah,
we didn't have time, or we already had this. We didn't have the skill set for it, and
yeah,
and the other one is in very distributed architecture. I run an architecture team that was 5 different locations where
yeah,
all different cultures as well,
yeah.
and and they all had very different point of views. I think the answer to that was taken on the journey, but that's hard work as well. So yeah, I think
It is.
we do need to address that permaculture.
Yeah,
And maybe having product patterns which are already packaged up now is the answer to that now, because you get the developers working on the bits you want in the designs you gave them, and
yeah,
then the users of the different domains of the department, it's more integration, which is less.
indeed.
And they know what they're there for. An integration engineer, you're integrating stuff. You're not a software engineer,
Yeah.
and you're happy and you understand
Well,
the value. And there's no difference. It's you can
um,
do the good fun stuff in the
yeah.
evenings as well if you want.
I'd argue we're all software engineers, really. As
Yeah.
integration engineer, ETL developers,
Yeah.
data scientists, we're all building software, right? I mean, it's obviously different disciplines in there, but it is building software. But also, the interesting thing about large complex IT estates, including data and transactional side on the analytics and the transactional side, is you also got vendor systems which are big, opaque. They're not nicely componentized and stuff. So it's hard sharing technology and sharing stuff across an organization. It's just hard, right? It's hard to share. It's hard to share from a business process perspective. You say that different priorities, people have different, they move at different rates, all that kind of stuff. And as the organization grows and the estate gets more complex, we had to knit all that stuff together in a nice cohesive fashion is really difficult, right? Especially if you've got legacy systems, if you've got vendor systems, you've got multiple departments using the same system, and you've got microservices versus big monoliths and stuff. So it's hard. IT estates is complex around that. So I was doing service oriented architecture back in the 2000s, and it was brilliant, but a lot of them failed not because of the technology, because the governance wasn't there. Fundamentally, I need to create a new service. I need to go to a team, a central governance team, to say, actually, do I extend that service or do I build another one? Which is great, but if that governance then gets taken away because of cost cutting, you're in the Wild West again. So you end up with 5 different microservices which do exactly the same thing, run by different departments. And again, this is the data product kind of. This is the same challenge we have with data products. Data product has a very similar kind of mindset to these composable things. You still need this governance, overarching governance, even across the distributed systems, landscape, and that really is where the where the rubber hits the road in my mind.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some more questions that we'll come back to. I maybe could shout out to Val before we go to that.
Oh yes, hey Val, how you doing?
Yeah, so always adding value, Val. Never get logged into just a vendor stack. Happens a lot. Yeah. Totally. We'll catch up soon, Val, probably the next meetup. But I think before we got into some other questions, I think this is on the topics that we talked about, and I think it was data contracts versus data mesh, and where does it meet data products? And I like the term, and you used it before, where the rubber meets the road, or the runway, sorry. And I think we had a taxi debate as well on the way back from one of the meetups, or Big Data London, one of them. It was a bit blurred that week, only 1 week. And we touched on data contracts, and there's and we'll stick. We won't go full future. Let's talk about now for now. We got more time. We can talk about where we think that's going. And you talked about where and I saw this before when people were building APIs or microservices.
Yeah.
There was no data model they were doing this to, and you're right, there was such duplication that was going. Oh, that one owned that one. I'm going to put this call into here, because I don't think they've been defined well as business services or what they're performing, and then mapping it onto maybe your minimal viable data and mapping it onto associated data. I remember getting into big debates with one of them that was, I don't need to have a timestamp, or no, I don't need to have the time zone on my API or my microservice and the database. Why not? Because I need to display the time it was, and so, well, different countries, you know. Well, yeah, well, they're just going to see it. They'll see which one it is anyway. I mean, no, because we want the information to actually know what the load is at that particular time. What was on a particular financial day? What was movement of days across different time zones and different worldwide time zones. So I think there's that, and this is where contracts do come in. And we've had API contracts. Swagger's really helped with that, and I suppose with APG. APG got acquired by Salesforce, I think. But anyway, there's products like that help to manage those things. But they, yes, I suppose had some level of success, and I suppose they must have, because many platforms have been built on top of them. It gave some stability. So where do you see data contracts helping with us in this world we currently live in?
Yeah, so it's interesting you say some stability. I mean, I've used them. I used it 2 years ago, right? I built a whole microservices architecture using .NET and Swagger contracts and service contracts. I've been doing that for 20 years. So I actually really believe in service contracts and API contracts. That they are the bedrock of a lot of, and messaging contracts as well. I've done a lot of work in finance where we have like Fix and Swift and these sort of messaging protocol contracts, which are absolutely vital to keep low latency messaging and trading, and message not falling through the floor because it costs money, that kind of stuff. So I'm fully bought into that. The data contract piece is kind of interesting to me because I get why they're there, and where they've come from. And obviously they've grown a little bit. I do understand why they've come from. There's this where you have a data team that's getting data out of a physical data model using an ETL tool or CDC or something like that, and it breaks, and you want to be able to actually do this. You want to be able to fix it. You want to know it's happened. You want to be able to fix it. I understand that. But the interesting thing, if you look at service contracts, which are microservices. So if I want to get some data out of a system, I build a potentially microservice on top of it. It abstracts away the whole the scheme of the native vendor systems called strangler pattern or service facade, and it has a number of API methods on it. We say get this, get that, update this, delete that type of stuff, and there's data in and out of that, right? And again, that's the metadata version of that. That to me is a tried and tested pattern that's been around for 20 years. That really is. What I still struggle a little bit is kind of how that reconciles into the data contract. Because the data contract they're not methods. They're not like, give me this, update this. They are, here's the data that I'm delivering to you, and I totally buy into that whole metadata piece, which you need, and you can have, you add things like policies, and, you can have some, schema validation and some data quality or data validation rules, really, that sort of stuff, which I get. But the whole concept of a service is you're creating potentially a service for multiple users, or you're creating services which are for different users and different things. They all have their own pieces, and that to me is where the data product comes in. Fundamentally, and this is what we come back to earlier. Data product, in my mind, the way I built them, is more like the microservice. So it gets the data it needs from all the tools and systems. It builds the data validation quality rules, and it has its own schema, has the model on top, has any UX that goes with it, has an API, and there's a whole package. And to your point earlier, if two data products use the same data set but have different attributes on them, have different data validation, data quality rules on them, they can do that fundamentally. And that to me really, and our solution actually has a data product with API contracts. It has like a metric. So I've got, you have a metric window function effectively with an API on it, REST-based API with a Swagger, type metadata, execute metric, and you've got a number of parameters on that, by region, by date, by this kind of stuff. So you can change that sort of stuff, and it gives you back the output of that. But it's executing code, and then on top of the data around that. That to me is kind of a very, very natural, and tried and tested method for doing that, doing that. But obviously you need to be able to be building the models rather than just be able to deliver data.
And I think just to probably summarize that and confirm you think it's the same thing, is what side you put in the business rules. So are you providing those business rules as part of the contract, or are you providing a data contract that the subscriber of it, the data product, can go and put the appropriate rules on that it needs on top of the generic things that are provided? So out of the box, you should have some basic quality quality pieces, but it
Yeah.
not be restricted and reject everything. It allow them to go through, maybe create reject tables or exception and metadata that know that it didn't pass certain things, but allow the data to go through, and then to allow the consumer in an event sort of way. I'm going to actually take them based on the rules I apply of whether I take it or I don't take it. I think is that would you describe that as well? Would you say that's the same?
I think there's two different angles. Well, I think there's two different angles. There's like basically, am I delivering data to the enterprise? Am I data only kind of capability? Am I delivering events, this kind of building kind of a data-led data foundation, or am I building business? Not just the rules, it's the model. So for me, the data product is some kind of model that actually drives a use case. So it could be a machine learning algorithm, it could be a this kind of stuff, and the data I require from transactional systems and potentially other data products as well. I own the quality or the validation of that data for that particular use case. For me, so there's two sides of it. If I'm delivering data on one side, or I'm actually then just encapsulating all data integration for a product by use case basis. I'm more of an advocate of the second. I know there's it's not right or wrong. It's just the way I tend to think about it, because actually all those validation rules, data quality rules, whatever, are completely subjective to the usage of them. And I like, in terms of doing an end-to-end delivery and delivering the whole thing, and also the fact is you can have data quality rules conflicts. So if it's again same data set, if I'm just delivering data itself, we've got two different use cases and they've got different rules, different data quality conflict.
Yeah, I'm not playing devil advocate, but just another view on this as well is
sure.
is getting feedback from the business is critical to understanding the quality of it. And if you're able to, and this is where ownership of the source data to ownership of the domain data can be different, but we're always trying to shift left on that quality to make sure that the close we can get that, I used to refer to it as a data quality firewall, at the point of ingest, at the point that data hits hits the road or hits the rubber, hits the road. And the point, if you can bring that back there, you just solve so much. And if having that contract that is not restrictive, so basically it's more of a contact rule based, putting stuff on there that's bringing it all in, but providing that back to the owner that then can actually help define the right business rules, because they're going to understand what's normal and what's not normal. But I do.
You're right, Chris. But it's like I said, what's normal and what isn't. The source system normally doesn't care downstream, right? They don't care. The system teams, that kind of stuff, they don't really care about that, right? Because this is half the problem. And if they've got two separate teams asking for data, fundamentally for two different use cases, fundamentally, and it might be the same data or it might be an overlap, we don't know. What can happen is basically the source system team, or maybe even the data team, the consuming teams, build point-to-point interfaces between the two, right? Fundamentally, and which is not ideal. Ideally, you want a service which, if it's sales records, you want one server to consume the sales records. But that if you do that, then the two system teams, the two downstream teams might have completely different requirements around quality, right? The classic one was I worked with an organization that's 120 years old. It's got customers in there which are very elderly customers, and when they joined it, they didn't require date of birth, for instance. Fundamentally, to be clear, back in the 60s, 70s, whatever it is, and they're still customers of them. The business runs very, very nicely without date of birth being as part of the customer record. But the marketing team are tearing their hair out, so we want to do segmentation by age and stuff. We can't do this, right? Fundamentally.
Well, they can guess how old if they know that when that problem came in, they can know the minimum age that they have to be to bought the product at that point. So there can be some stuff inferred, but with some rules.
Yeah, exactly right. But they can't, in order to do detailed segmentation, they can't do it. I guess that's kind of my point. It's like data quality or data validation is really what we're talking about. It's in the eye of the beholder. It's in the eye of the consumer. So I get the any fixes to the data or any changes to the data to serve those data validation rules has to be owned by the system of record. I think that's a given. I mean, we can talk about ownership and stuff, and I don't think really ownership really actually exists in the way we thought the day they own it. It's like they fix it, right? They pay to fix it. But actually, the definition of those is really down to the individual consumers, because it's completely dependent on that. And for me, when you're delivering an end-to-end piece, so I'm delivering a business use case, I want to control all the components, and I want that encapsulated into the end-to-end delivery program, project, whatever it is, product, that kind of stuff. And I want all the teams involved in that, including the source systems team, to be part of that delivery. And that to me is really the key bit, is that end-to-end delivery piece. I mean, I think part of the challenges with a lot of data teams is the source system teams aren't. We're not going to do anything for downstream for the data teams because we're too busy and all this kind of stuff. And that's actually that's an operating model problem. And I think that's really the first.
I think you're right. And then that's where it's the people part which is much harder for us, and that's maybe where that CDO having more of a sales thing is like saying, look, if you change this process, the world gets a better place.
Exactly right. But if you improve your data layer, then actually, which is great, but actually you can break that. Because actually the business team say, well, it's a data layer, it's not my, I don't care, I don't own it, that kind of stuff, right? So that can actually work against you to try and build a kind of generic data layer, and just in terms of an end-to-end delivery model. It's not always the case, but it can do. It's just something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Jones and Val are just exchanging conversation. I think they're agreeing, and then sort of like, so we may come back to them in a second. And I think I just want to, the third bullet I think we had there, and I think I'll probably give a little bit of summary so you can see whether we talk about data mesh meets data products meets data contracts. I think the key thing, it's that product mentality. Contract, data mesh, data vault, Kimball. We had it at the whole panel the other day. Who gives a it's what helps actually, or whatever methodology you call it, as long as it has appropriate governance, as long as it has appropriate guardrails, and it's able to satisfy the requirements needed for your data product. That's where they all come together, I think.
Exactly right. And it's really the data product is a fine balancing act between fast delivery for business use cases and overall control and governance, right? You've got to weave that kind of that way through it, and it's not this is exactly how you do it. It's down to organizations and stuff, but you need to create that balance. If you go to one side, too much control and governance, let's get everything into our data platform first before we model it and that kind of stuff. That to me is your agility suffers and the business will go off and build something themselves. Or you don't want the other way, which is complete Wild West, just bunging data sets around with the business teams and Excel spreadsheets, even though they do this all the time. But you need to find that way between, that sweet spot between those two things.
Yeah, it's a good leadership that can allow that water to carve its own path to its natural destination within the sea. It's like the river, if you hit that road, your governance people say, look, I understand now. Okay, all right, it's not going to work. We're not going to get there if I have to drive this water through this big rock that's coming our way. Let's go around it.
I've got another acronym: minimum viable governance. How about that?
Yeah, MVG. We got all the MVs at the moment. I like that. I like our and I think that we had the fourth bullet point, and we'll come back to some questions as well. Which I know I always like to use this term value, and the current working title of that, if anyone hasn't heard me say it already, it's business value is an evidenceable positive impact on your company or business performance. And what your business performance is, it might not always be bottom line in year 1, it might be year 5, but I think so that's why I say business value. So and how do we think we're going to deliver that using data products?
So I'll tell you how I do that. Obviously, it's different for lots of people, but it comes back to kind of what I talked about earlier, that driving the business conversation, fundamentally. And you can get in a room, I can do a day's workshop with some business leaders, go through their business strategy, work out obviously I've got something called a data product pyramid, which is a process that really helps that. Drive that like I did with that organization the other day. What's the outcome? Oh, that looks like you need this, and this. And what you come out at the end of it actually is, and you do things like RICE scoring and have a value framework, which is really, really useful. What's the impact to your customers? What's the reach? What's the approximate addressable market? All that sort of stuff. Which you can also do internally as well. What's the cost? What's the it doesn't have to be like monetary value. It can be like friction. Like we're going to reduce the number of people, or not people, the number of increase their productivity. We're going to ESG is another classic one. Sustainability. There's lots of dimensions you can bring into kind of the value piece of it. But you define that up front, and then you go and sit in a room with the business leader, and it's really important to be there with the business leader and actually define what their outcome is based on these products and the language that I talked about before. If you do that, suddenly the value kind of conversation gets it's almost like implicit rather than explicit. but it does. That's a very product-driven mindset, but it does take quite a lot of there's a cultural change a little bit around that. You do need a process. You can't just walk in there and say, let's just define this, because you'll end up all over the place. So you do need some structure and a way of actually doing that, and using kind of classic product management feeling. And you do need the business teams to be able to actually buy into that. Because the other thing is about this is we can define great analytics. Not just trust, but also they buy into actually doing it. It is a change that So what you don't want to do is say to the head of sales, like, I can increase your revenue by 30%, but it means you've got to change your sales process. And they go, no, I'm not going to do that. So that's the business change aspect, and that's super key, because we've all been there. We've delivered products, delivered analytics, and the business hasn't adopted them.
Yeah, and I think that, well, I'm going to link it back to trust to some degree, because failed historical experiences. But I think is that evidenceable thing. I think they've been, which goes back to that trust, is they've been told, I'm going to give you 30 times ROI, and it's heard it, seen it before, and whatever. So it's just dismissed. So I think whatever you put in, I think building up trust over time will allow you to make sure you can put things in there that allows you to evidence the value you provided with the incremental features on the products, that makes that journey to become data product driven not easy, but easier.
Indeed. But it does, the buy-in, you absolutely trusted it, but also you do need the buy-in to think, we're actually going to change the business with this, because if the business don't want to change, it doesn't matter what analytics you build.
Exactly.
So they want to be able, and that trust is definitely a part of that. But part of it is also, the executive hammer, we used to call it, right? And back in management consulting, you go to the head of sales or the CEO, whatever it is, and say, look, we are going to, you got to be up for changing the business. Yes, we do it small incrementally, low cost, low risk. We'll try some bits out, this kind of stuff. So it's really, again, like you would do with customers in an external environment. But they go, oh yes, we're going to try that, and and if we get a good result, we are going to change do business process reengineering or what have you want to do it. So that's got to be, I think, quite a key piece. And
we couldn't have a whole webinar without bringing up generative AI or LLM.
Yes.
And I mean, as a closing topic, and we'll see if we answer any questions afterwards. And this is where you touched on it earlier, that ChatGPT is a good example of a feature that is or data product that's
I call that data product,
and with many features that it's being added onto it to add more capabilities, associated value, stickiness, loyalty to stick with them over maybe the Bard or alternative ones. So how have you seen? Well, we're at Big Data London. We chat to lots of vendors. We see the good, the bad, the ugly. Everyone's adding LLM features on the mean data sheets to their SaaS products. What advice do you give out there to anyone? Like, what about when everyone brings it up? What questions do you think they should ask to make sure that it's actually not just a bit of glitter?
So I mean, obviously, it comes down to what business problem you're solving, right? Fundamentally, I think it's I do often ask the question: are you more interested in building an LLM or actually solving a business problem with an LLM? And that's the top cut, the top thing, I think. But I mean, I did a talk, just before Big Data London, around kind of LLMs and data products, and the way I sort of classify it, well, transformers, I won't just call LLMs, because transformers can be small ones, they can be big ones, those kinds of transformer type, generative AI type architecture or components. And there's sort of three ways I classify this. There's Dev Assist, which is like the Copilot, so in a data product kind of ecosystem infrastructure, do, Copilot type, when you're building, they could be building generation documents or, data contracts or whatever you're doing to do that. That's one aspect of it. The second one is a platform feature. So, doing data point extraction, doing classification, doing kind of stuff as part of an ingestion pipeline, but it's deep in the product, deep in the kind of whatever platform or product you're using, that kind of stuff. That's the second one. And the third one is basically where it's actually a core part of the data product of the solution. I did a piece 2 years ago where we're generating job adverts, so using a transformer architecture to actually generate and regenerate job adverts based on, diversity, inclusion, and SEO and all this stuff. So the recruiters would create the job advert, and it would actually use generative AI to create a new one, which is much more kind of those low bullet points and with gender neutral language, all that kind of stuff to get a bit bigger reach. That's an example of the third category, which is actually a LLM or transformer. It's actually a core part of the product, core USP of the product. So you've also got to think about where in your kind of use cases those three types of things are going to be used, because they're all valid and they're all good, but there are different usages of them.
I think that's good. Always going down to the use case of what it's actually trying to achieve, and it was probably no surprise with that really. But I think we were going to agree on that one. But I like that co-pilot term, and I think there's been I think we've calmed down a little bit now. Everyone was a little bit worried that it's going to be a Skynet 2 or whatever, and the world's going to end. But I think we've realised its limitation and what it actually can achieve for us. And I think I did another post about this where I tongue in cheek to some degree that UI UX is dead. It's going to be a prompt box, and I upset some people about that one. But yeah, it was like tongue in cheek. But I think what I think it highlights is back to that architecture patterns. Is do you want to go and write a load of documentation for you to go and teach someone to go and use your UI of your product that you need to generate some complex business rules that if you described it in a certain way, you could be written for you? Why bother wasting your time on that when you have a bit of generative AI been trained up on what the syntax is and can be able to translate that from different variations of that into some code. The code that's going to be that sort of, which you can still use the CLI for it. You still do that for the API. But you just save the shed load of time building a UI, very complex, looking at the colors, the schemes, were they all right? Did the flow work well? Testing it all. Did you need to do it? So, I think that's an area that we're good.
Driving kind of the workflow you would do with wizard-based screen stuff. Now I've got this in my solution. We've got wizard-based screens, and we're building a natural language interface onto that and actually be able to drive that. So actually, the interesting thing is if you can with that, you've got a lot more real estate back, and you can actually drive visualizations that go along the interactive. While you're typing stuff, almost like the sort of NLP notebook type approach, where you're doing I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and you can actually get the visualizations on the other side of the screen as you type it. You're going through rather than like you do with a Jupyter or those sort of notebooks. That is actually a really powerful kind of paradigm. But you're not just using the core training or corpus. You're using RAG and other stuff. You're prompt engineering under the covers to actually call APIs and this kind of stuff. And that suddenly your user experience gets a lot richer and gets a lot more interesting because you can actually have this kind of conversational approach with whatever business process you're doing. And that's something that's quite unusual. NLP and interfaces have been around for a long time, but that conversational element that really with your business process is definitely a piece. And obviously under those you can have underlying data products to give you forecasts and this kind of stuff as well. That to me is a real game changer in my mind.
Yeah, and I think that we'll all experience and I think there was a question of biggest failures. I think the biggest failures normally is the distance between the IT and business. And then maybe this is the glue that's going to bring that together and help with that prototyping of getting that discussion going quicker from a business context to how that's actually delivered technically.
But also just on that, I think it's also the simple stuff. I'm going through a real mortgage application, and it's really difficult. I'm getting forms I have to download, I have to fill in, sign, all this kind of stuff. Why am I still doing that in this day and age, right? There's a workflow that for a mortgage application, we all know what it is. There's with remortgage and stuff. Why can't I just go into a chatbot and go, right, here it is, and just run through that workflow in real time, get sign off and all that sort of stuff, and have it done in like 30 seconds, as opposed to weeks and months and stuff. So that to me is a real game changing element.
That's a really good point. It's been designed here and now. So any mortgage companies, you publish your contracts for your applications with the same metadata. We're going to train up that metadata with Jon's transformers that he's got in his in his data center, just waiting for a challenge, and you're going to train him up to automate to your applications of mortgages. So you heard it here first. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
We take any angel investors you can contact.
Yeah, exactly right.
I think we're nearly. I'm just gonna. I'll keep you on there as well. We're just gonna put. We got Sonny Riviera next week. Everyone's probably he was on the panel that we were discussing last week. So it'd be cool to have him.
He's awesome. You're looking forward to that one.
He's always, so always love our online debates, put face-to-face debates, drunken debates, all of the chats we've had. Anyone want to shout out to anyone, like how they can find you or or the
Yeah,
not
sure.
Hemingway, but
Yeah, come meet at the Hemingway every Tuesday. No, obviously there's the meetups that the great meetups that you guys do, which is fantastic. But obviously, just see me online. I'm quite active online on LinkedIn. Emails Jon Cooke at dataception.com. Yeah, those are two of the best ways to get through to me. As I say, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, if you don't already follow John, I suggest you do. You probably already follow me by now, so you must have seen some of the interactions we've had. And a big shout out to everyone. There's so many people I've seen regular names on there: Ngozi, Dan, our own. I didn't get to put all the questions out there, but we had Andy Wenham on there. We had Finn as well. So thanks everyone for tuning in. As I say, we're back to the normal Monday. I apologise about the microphone at the beginning. It was ironic. It was actually John had the problem first of all in the green room, and then when we went live, it was me. So sorry about that.
Right.
As John said, we find us on our website. I'll put the link in the comments. We do the meetup once a month. It's a low key, high value drink with a great crowd. Not a pushy sales place. It's all about community stuff. So yeah, thanks everyone, and hope tune in to next week to the chat with Sonny, where we'll be talking about the value of data accessibility.
So thanks for having me on, Chris. It's been an absolute blast as always.
Always a pleasure, John. Always a pleasure. So all right, that's a wrap, and I'm going to end it now. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.